Welcome to the Don't Feed the Fear podcast, where we dive into the complex world of food allergy anxiety. I'm your host, Dr. Amanda Whitehouse, food allergy anxiety psychologist and food allergy mom. Whether you're dealing with allergies yourself or supporting someone who is, join us for an empathetic and informative journey toward food allergy calm and confidence. Welcome back to Don't Feed the Fear. This episode is coming out just after I return from the Food Allergy Anaphylaxis Connection Team, or FAACT, Allergy Summit, where I got to spend some more time with Emery Brown, a school psychologist. Emery is such a great resource. She knows about FAACT way back to when she started with them as a volunteer teen counselor through their summer programs for children, and now is their director of behavioral health. She brings to this position her own stories and experience of living as a young person and an adult with food allergies, and she has been working on creating an amazing resource center with so many things that I want you to check out and utilize. Emery and I talk about the experiences of children and families as they navigate anxiety, school challenges, the emotional side of living with food allergies, her interest in play therapy. I'm so excited to share our conversation with you today. I know you'll enjoy hearing from her just as much as I do. Emery, it's so good to see you again. Thanks for coming here onto the podcast to talk about all things food allergies, school psychology, mental health, and behavioral health. I'm so excited to have you.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here.
Let's start by sharing your history and your personal experience that brought you into the food allergy world and community.
Absolutely. So I was diagnosed with food allergies when I was 8 months old because my aunt dropped ice cream on me when she was having some ice cream and I broke out in hives. Thankfully, my parents already knew what food allergies were because of my sister, who has a peanut, tree nut, and soy allergy. So as soon as they saw the hives, they knew that it was probably food allergy and got me an appointment with an allergist where I was diagnosed with an anaphylactic dairy allergy. Luckily, obviously, it was found out when it was dropped on my skin rather than ingested. I got an EpiPen. And from there, I was also diagnosed with an egg allergy that I outgrew when I was 6 years old. But then as time went on, I did also develop a peanut allergy, fish allergy, shellfish allergy, and tree nut allergy. But I was able to outgrow shellfish as a young adult. And my last allergist appointment actually showed that I wasn't coming up allergic to finfish either. So I actually have an upcoming food challenge for that, which is really exciting. But when I was a young adult as well, while some of those allergies were going away, I also was diagnosed with my peanut allergy and tree nut allergies in my 20s. So I've had lifelong allergies. I've never been without them, but they've changed over time. But basically been in the food allergy world since I was a child.
That's so much change. A lot of people have food allergies and then maybe outgrow some of them, but has it been hard to adjust throughout your life in terms of I'm not allergic to this anymore, now I'm allergic to this, and changing your routines?
That's an interesting question, and I would definitely say yes. I would say it's a little bit easier for me because my sister has food allergies, all my cousins do, and while my sister's allergies haven't fluctuated, they were different than mine growing up, so we were used to kind of catering to different things. When I became allergic to peanuts at 21, it was definitely very upsetting because I loved peanut butter. That's all I could say, because I have no, state of reference for my dairy allergy. I've always been allergic and I'm still allergic, but, I had the taste. But all my cousins are allergic and so is my sister, so it wasn't that big of a deal. And I am married and my husband gave up all my food allergies and, he didn't find it a shift at all. So it's kind of, I think, when you're in the world, I always say you find other things that you really like. And so at one time it felt like a big deal, but then as I found more and more things that I like, as I got a passion for cooking, as I got a passion for finding restaurants that cater to multiple food allergies and special meals and this and that, it became a lot smaller of a deal.
So there's an adjustment period as you find alternatives and maybe mourn a little bit some of the favorite foods when you lose them.
Definitely.
That's tough. I want to get into your work at FAACT, but you just mentioned a couple things that I know people really love to hear about. And one of them is like relationships and marriage with food allergies. And, I think people feel discouraged about finding a partner who will accommodate them. But I meet so many young people who are like, yeah, my partner was like, no problem. So do you want to talk about what that was like for you as you were growing up and getting into dating life?
This is definitely one of my favorite topics to address. I started volunteering with FAACT and attending conferences related to food allergies ever since I was a kid. So now I'm on the other side of that as a professional and an adult and addressing kids and teens that, I used to sit in their seat. and listened to other people that were in my seat talking about it. And I can remember being 12 and going to my first food allergy conference against my will. My parents made me go. And I remember listening to different things about dating and school and field trips and eating out. And I didn't care about it at all. It put it in my back pocket, save it for another day. But I kept going back to the conferences. You make relationships with people. And then there comes a point in your life where the things that you were learning become applicable. And so I am glad that my parents made me go to those different things even before I was ready for it, because I learned a lot of things that I definitely was able to apply later. A lot of food allergy parents say, if someone doesn't respect your food allergies, then they're not going to respect you. And I think that that is a really real statement. And previously to finding my husband, I dated people that were great about my food allergies, and I dated people that didn't care. And when I started dating my husband, he actually would drink half a gallon of milk a day. This man loved milk. And when we got engaged and obviously married, he gave it up. Now he drinks about half gallon of oat milk, and he says he can't even remember what milk tastes like anymore, probably for the best. But I think it's continually an important conversation to talk about, because I do think a lot of people think that they have to settle or there's no way that that could happen to them. But I did mention my sister has food allergies as well, and her husband gave up her allergens as well. So this is something that I've seen happen for other people as well. And I like to caution parents too that even if your kid is annoyed by having these conversations, they're important conversations to have, because while I don't like to talk about the history before my husband, I actually have had a reaction kissing someone that had a milkshake before, and I well knew that they had one, but I just didn't think that it would happen. I knew that you're not supposed to do that, right? But that current partner didn't really care, and I wasn't going to make it a big deal because I really wanted to date that person. And I did. I mean, it was not an anaphylactic reaction, luckily, but it was still scary and still kind of a wake-up call for me that this does happen, and maybe this person doesn't care about me the way that they should. And definitely my husband does. And if anything, he sometimes, of course, I take my food allergies really seriously, but sometimes I feel like he even takes them more seriously. And he's my biggest advocate. He never leaves the house without EpiPens in his pocket as well. He's a great supporter.
Well, that's awesome. You make a good point, but it's one of those things. Sometimes teens just have to experience, not just teens, everyone, humans have to experience things for themselves in order to learn. So we obviously don't want to have them have a huge, dangerous reaction. But like you said, having that knowledge beforehand when it wasn't necessarily time for it yet, but you had already been exposed to the ideas, is a big help in terms of being prepared then when the moment comes. You still didn't obviously make the ideal decision, but you had some knowledge going into it and some preparation that, I think probably was important in how you responded when you started to have a reaction.
Absolutely. And I'm sure that you're familiar with the statistics about those risk-taking ages, and that like late teens into the early 20s is the biggest time we see risk-taking when it comes to food allergy, and lots of other things, of course, as well. But I think there's a kind of thing that we all say that I definitely agree with, that food allergy kids tend to be more respectful. They are more responsible. They're reading ingredient labels. They mature faster because they have this health condition that they have to manage, and they have to learn to do that well and independently. But at the same time, they're still a kid and they're still in those years. And I think a lot of parents might say, like, not my child. They wouldn't do that. I know my parents would have. I was a high achieving high school student. I, went to college on a scholarship, and I took risks that I'm not proud of. And the reason that I share that is because I think you don't ever want to think that your child is different in the way that they're not going to go through that or fall to peer pressure or wanting to fit in. That's why we do have the conversations in advance. And that's why we have those conversations repeatedly, with the hope that when our child is faced with a more problematic situation, whether it's kissing someone that ate an allergen, or they're at a party and they don't know what's in a beverage, or they're at a restaurant that maybe they wouldn't have gone to otherwise because they don't have allergen protocols, they'll be prepared to make the right decision and the smart decision and the decision that ultimately keeps them safe.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're sharing that. Thank you, because I think it makes a good point. We think of things so black and white, and it's not just like, oh, they're a really good kid, I know they wouldn't do that. It is a phase of development, but it's actually like an important stage for kids to go through and develop. So if we can put some scaffolding and structure around it to help them do it more safely, yes, but they do still need to take risks and step out on their own and learn to make their own decisions. It's not that we just want them to do everything we say forever and not go through that teenage phase, right?
Incredibly well said. And I actually think that that's something that parents can really work to. What's an appropriate risk that doesn't come with any sort of consequences in the sense of they'll have an allergic reaction, but what's an appropriate risk that you can talk through with your child to get them to that next state of development? So can it be that you are comfortable with them going out with their friends to their favorite safe restaurant and you don't need to be there because you know that they're going to order the same thing that they always ordered? They're going to ask the questions that you have watched them ask and trained them to ask, and you're ready for them to do that on their own. Could it be that you feel like they can go to a new restaurant and order a safe item that doesn't contain their allergens? Even as an adult with food allergies, I get nervous at new restaurants sometimes, but sometimes I'll go for that social situation with friends. But do you feel like that's a contained risk that you can allow your child to take? Because one day then you're not going to be there. So containing a risk and kind of having it be a safe test of what can they handle and can they actually implement the skills that you've helped them learn and you've taught them. That's a good thing that I would encourage parents to do.
Definitely. Thank you for explaining that so clearly, because it's so important and it's so hard for us to do as parents too. So we need the reminders all the time. One of the other things I wanted to touch on, a lot of the clients that I work with, again, back to black or white thinking, either think that their partners won't accommodate and that's going to be so hard, I don't want to disclose it, or this idea that my partner must avoid and never eat all my allergens. And I just want to emphasize, I think for people listening, it doesn't always mean they don't support you if they refuse to never eat your allergens again, right? Like you have to individually hash that out with someone that you're in a relationship, just like any topic between the two of you.
Absolutely. And obviously the best conclusion is one that you both feel comfortable with. I'm actually obviously very happy that my husband gave up my food allergens, but if he was more comfortable with, eating them when I'm away for trips, or, if we know that he, if he wanted to eat something for breakfast and he was going to brush his teeth and, that 6-hour time frame was going to be long gone with double brushings until we were back together, I would be comfortable with that. It was my husband that wasn't. And he said something very powerful to me that, he just wanted to make sure that there was nothing I ever had to second guess. And I think when you do sometimes have anxiety related to your food allergies, not having to second guess something is, a huge relief. But I absolutely agree with you. It's whatever you as a couple both feel comfortable with without you sacrificing what ultimately makes you comfortable in this situation. Not that you're minimizing your partner, but you are the one that ultimately has to manage the food allergies and feel comfortable. So for me, I am excited that now I have my own house where there hasn't been a single allergen that's ever, touched it. But I grew up in a house where my parents safely kept my allergens and they kept it separate from the things that I ate, right? So I'm now an adult that's choosing what feels right for me with the support of my partner, but you are absolutely right. It's going to be different from everyone. And just because someone's partner does eat their allergens, it can still come with a huge amount of support and respect. It's what you're deciding for the safety of both of you and the comfort of both of you. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And you touched on a big part of what factors into that conversation. Safety obviously is the utmost important thing to establish in whatever you work out. But anxiety about food allergies plays such a big role. And so I would love for you to talk about, your role at FAACT in helping people with that and what you've learned since you've been in that role, both as an individual living with it and now professionally helping other people manage it.
That's a great question. I think I developed the ability to help people with food allergies deal with anxiety for twofold. Number one, I was a kid, teen, and now an adult that has anxiety surrounding my food allergies. But number two, I'm a school psychologist. And with that comes a lot of training in mental health and specifically helping people manage their anxiety, specifically in my case, kids and teens. But with that, I was able to use my knowledge of that and serve my role at FAACT as the Director of Behavioral Health to encapsulate kind of both the things twofold, allergies and anxiety management. But learning to manage my own anxieties, certainly, it's one thing when you professionally know it and have the knowledge from schooling and education. Another thing for actually helping people and see the results. But then I think it goes a step further because I've lived it and I can see the helpful results. So when it comes to managing food allergy related anxiety, I think that there's two parts that are important to talk about. Number one, the person that's dealing with the anxiety. But number two, if we're talking about a kid and teen, how the parent is reacting to that anxiety. I share this often, and so I can never share these podcasts with my parents. My parents are wonderful, but my mom is incredibly anxious about many things, so it didn't help when she had children that had food allergies. That just made her already existing anxiety worse. So a lot of my allergic reactions as a child, I can just remember a lot of anxiety from my mom, and that's really what I remember, which made me anxious. Maybe in times I didn't even have to be, or maybe in times where I could have used an anxiety management skill or a coping skill, as we call it, to get through that a little bit better. We just didn't have that, and my mom didn't have that, and I don't blame her for it. At that time, it wasn't a conversation that was really talked about, which is why I think it's great, that you're doing what you're doing with Don't Feed the Fear, and we're doing what we're doing over at the Behavioral Health Resource Center at FAACT, and we're making these conversations a part of the norm. We're making, even in some cases, it a part of treatment plans, which I think is great because you manage your food allergies and you manage anxiety. Both things are managed, and oftentimes they have to be managed simultaneously. So for myself and for what I tell others is get a coping skill, and it's going to be different for everyone. So my coping skill that works best for me is taking a walk or taking deep breaths. That's not the same for my husband. He would want to do a task, or he might want to get out of the house but not take a walk or something like that. When it comes for kids, so they might not have the same one as you. You might like to color, draw, read a book, and your child might want to go do some jumping jacks, or they might want to talk about it, although that's not as common of a coping skill for children that much. But most importantly, for kids that are aged, less than one, as well, to 8, they need something called co-regulation. And that's where you do the coping skill with them. And I feel like that's a missing link a lot of the times, because we'll say, calm down or take a deep breath. But kids up until age 8 or before age 8 just don't have that ability. So they need someone to do it with you. Watch me. I'm going to take a deep breath. Will you do it with me? Or remind me how old you are. You're 5. And you hold up your hand and you see 5 candles and you say, can you blow out these candles? And you make it a little game. And they only got 2 candles, and now they have all the candles, and you just took 2 really great breaths. Even as adults, sometimes we prefer co-regulation over using a regulatory coping skill for ourselves. Sometimes when I'm really upset, we all get upset, right? I'll ask for a big hug from my husband, and that's a squeeze. That's regulation. Or sometimes I'll call my sister and I'll walk and talk, because I do want to talk to someone. I want to get my body moving, but I don't want to be just in my head with my thoughts. That's co-regulation. So if we still use co-regulation as an adult, all the more important that we need to make sure that we're providing that opportunity for co-regulation for our children. For a parent to be a really effective co-regulator, they need to be able to regulate themselves. So the best thing to do when a child's dysregulated, when a child's upset, when a child's having anxiety, whether that's related to food allergy anxiety or not, a connected adult that is connected to their own emotion and not just kind of falling into the waves of their child's emotion. My child is anxious. I'm anxious. There's something really bad happening. Regulating yourself first so you can effectively co-regulate is really important. And that means that the child, the parent, the caregiver to that child has these coping skills well developed as well. And they can be different than the style in which you're co-regulating with your child if you know what your child likes. On FAACT's Behavioral Resource Center, we have a fun, kid-friendly A to Z coping skill checklist. So if you don't know what helps your child regulate, you could do a fun adventure as a family, try a different coping skill every day, and X out the ones that you don't like and circle the ones you do. Because sometimes we want to fill a huge toolbox with a lot of skills when really you only need 1 or 2, maybe 3 that work consistently and that you can help your child master and that you can master for yourself.
What you're explaining is so helpful, because parents think I have to make my child do this skill, but that is not the point when they're this young. It's literally, they can only be calm and regulated if we are calm and regulated. Our bodies are connected. So what you're describing is doing the thing, is calming yourself down and them with you, not you must do this skill. I'm still over here freaking out, but I'm going to make you breathe and everything is going to be better.
Yes.
Right? go hand in hand.
That's so important to point out. And if you are the kind of parent, which a lot of our food allergy parents are, I just disclosed, so is my mom, so it's okay. There's no judgment here. But if you are the parent that's also going to be anxious too, calming down, using that co-regulation for yourself, so important. But also, kids are masters at sensing out if someone is disingenuous. So if you say, I'm not worried as you're shaking, or, you're crying and you're saying, no, I'm not scared. Don't worry. Like, you're going to be fine. But, you're crying or something like that. That's going to be scary to a kid. And they're going to say, oh, no, it's not fine. Something is wrong. You're crying. So the best thing to do is to recognize your feeling, recognize your child's feeling without reinforcing it. So I say recognize, don't reinforce. You're feeling really scared about trying a new restaurant. I'm feeling a little bit worried of you trying a new restaurant too, but we're going to do XYZ thing to make sure you're safe. And I'm going to be there with you. And so you can admit to being worried about something and recognize in your child rather than saying, you don't have to be worried. We're going to do this. No, they're probably going to be worried. And to a certain extent, that worry is adaptive. It's serving as a protective feature for them so that, they can prevent something bad happening. It's just when it kind of goes a little too far that we start having problems to manage. But recognizing that feeling, I am worried about this, you're worried about this, or anxious or scared or whatever feeling you want to substitute, overwhelmed, stressed, recognize it, and then say what you're going to do rather than reinforcing that it's the correct feeling. You're going to recognize that it is the feeling and what you're going to do about it.
Right. Because any adult understands, like any of us with our partner or our spouse, if I said I'm anxious and I was bothered by something and they said, well, you shouldn't be, or no, you're not, you're fine. It's so invalidating, but we do stuff like that to kids all the time, right? I say this to my audience all the time. I experience anxiety too, still, even though my son is doing really well. And even though we're in maintenance for treatments, anxiety just is going to come and go, just like any other feelings. But I think as food allergy parents, especially food allergy moms, we know how bad it feels when someone says, well, stop being so anxious. You're making your kid anxious. But just telling me not to be doesn't make me not anxious. The same goes for our kids, right? We have to teach them and show them and guide them through how to do it. Like you said, we have to acknowledge it and say that it's valid and work on it, to say the steps that we're doing to take care of it, not just push it aside or try to smush it.
Yes. And to be honest about it, I do get worried when you go out with your friends, but I'm proud that you use the skills that we've gone over together.
That's how they learn it, right? By seeing us do it.
Absolutely. That modeling is really key.
I would love it if you would tell us more. There's so many resources that you've created. Please tell the audience what else they will find if they go and look there.
Yeah, so absolutely. So if you head over to FAACT's website, which is the Food Allergy and Anaphylaxis Connection Team, you'll see a whole behavioral health resource center that has different informational sheets, as well as activities that have to do with navigating a new diagnosis, anxiety, depression, eating disorders, resilience, coping skills, self-care, the whole gamut of anything that deals with mental wellness. That's going to be in there. The A to Z checklist that I talked to you about, that's in there, as well as different sheets for families, kids, teens, adults with food allergies, and caretakers. So it's across the lifespan that these resources address, because kids with food allergies becomes teens with food allergies, who often become adults with food allergies. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, the caretaker or the parent can't be left out of this equation either, because a lot of the time we do really focus on treatment management for the child, anxiety management for the child, without talking about those same things for whoever is caretaking for that child, anxiety management for them, coping skills for them, self-care for them, and all of these things. So we're addressing the whole lifespan. Anybody that could need those things are on there for them, as well as for other comorbid conditions. So we do talk a lot about anxiety and food allergies, but it's also not uncommon to suffer from depression or be at a higher risk for an eating disorder when it comes to having a food allergy. And I think those are important topics to talk about and address, and for parents to be aware of, to look for warning signs. Children that have anxiety are at a higher risk for depression when they're in a teen and an adult. So even if that's not a concern now, if you're seeing anxiety, it could be a concern later. And that's not said to scare anybody, but it's said to, that's why we develop coping skills. That's why we develop self-care and put protective factors in place, like a community or therapy, or parents that, are open and talking about feelings, all these things, good friends that understand your food allergies, all these serve as protective factors that can be preventative from any of that ever happening. And then lastly, which I do love to talk about, is there's an area about resilience. And resilience is just a big fancy word for the ability to bounce back in the face of adversity. And we know as parents, caregivers, kids, adults, whoever's watching the podcast today, professionals that deal with food allergies, we need resilience because hard things do happen. And when we have the right things in place, hopefully they don't. But the hard things are not always as serious as an anaphylactic reaction. Sometimes the hard things are your friend's birthday party taking place at a sushi restaurant and you have a fish or shellfish allergy. Sometimes the hard things is, the work party ordering pizza and they forgot about you and you have a dairy allergy, right? Like myself, or whatever it may be. And you need resilience to be able to bounce back from that and keep going and it not, drag you down. So there's information on resilience, but there's also a downloadable kit that is meant for families to complete together. You can print it. It comes with coloring pages and activity sheets, and there's affirmations, which is just positive things that you can say. So we like to change negative self-talk to positive self-talk. So, thinking something after, a birthday party doesn't have a cake that you can have, a negative thought pattern might be, my friends don't really care about me. Well, we know that that's an extreme and that would be a thinking trap. And that's, probably not the reaction that's going to be helpful. But an affirmation could be, I have really good friends, or I have a family that cares about me, or I can have a safe snack later. So whatever it might be. So there's affirmations that you can color and cut out, hang them up on your fridge or in the bathroom mirror. You want to practice those with your children. There's also worksheets with what if scenarios. What if you couldn't have the snack that was brought to school? What would you do? And you're doing this as a family. So then, mom might say, I would do this. Dad might say, I would do this. Sister might say, I would do this. And you talk about it as a family. All these skills help build resilience, right? In some ways, I wish I didn't have food allergies because life would be easier. I mean, I could go to restaurants without worry. I could take something off the shelf without worry. And I wouldn't have met the people that I have. I wouldn't have met you, right? We wouldn't have got connected to do this podcast today. I have lifelong friends. My college roommate and friend, I attended her wedding a couple weeks ago. She and I met at a preteen conference when we were 11. We would have never met if it hadn't been for food allergies. My husband and I travel with another girl that I met at Camp Tag. We were both counselors. So through these different stages of life, so many key people to me, I wouldn't have met if I didn't have food allergies. So we need that resilience because the unchanging fact, unless we outgrow our food allergies, is we do have food allergies. So what is the good that we can find from that? And there is a lot of good to be found.
There are so many things in what you just said that I want to touch on. Just you caught yourself, you said but, and then you said and, you changed it to and, because that and makes such a big difference, right? The language we use is so important. I can feel the disappointment and the sadness about all these things and recognize and hold space for both of those. Thank you for giving an example of how that's true, because you are holding space for all of those things. That's how life is, right? This big, full experience with the hard parts and the ability to recognize the growth and the benefits that are connected to it.
Yes, and I think even teaching, I'm sure you talk to your clients about it, and I use this with my students as well, but I don't get the same opportunity you do to work so much every day with clients with food allergies. But that dialectic of putting in that and can be very powerful because not only do we dismiss others with the but we dismiss ourselves. And I think, I did struggle for a while of like, can I feel like I don't want my food allergies and feel glad that I have them? For the certain extents of opportunities that have come along, would I change it? And those are hard. And I am grateful for the people that being a part of the food allergy community has brought into my life. And, I do hope that there's a day when food allergies aren't as prevalent or, can be managed in a different way too. And I do put in that and I think a lot of your listeners would start to kind of feel the relief and feel better to allow themselves the space to put in an and. I'm worried about my child, and I believe that they can grow up to be an independent, successful adult that manages their anxiety and their food allergies well.
Right. And it just takes time to develop
Mhm.
that. I'm not saying, and I know you're not saying the day your child's diagnosed, you should be able
No,
to
no, no,
see
of
that or
course.
feel that
Right,
way. It
yes.
does take time. But there's hope. It grows. You grow around your challenge, just like everybody else and their challenges that they have. There's one more piece of what you said that I don't want to lose that I think is so important that you were emphasizing doing and practicing the skills before
Mhm.
they are needed. We have to practice this stuff before the moment arrives where we need it, because once we're already in a dysregulated state, we're not going to be able to access it, remember it. It's not a safety signal to our bodies. So I think you're hitting that point home, and I wanted to too. We just have to practice just like we would practice any other skill, right?
So well said. And that's exactly right. And I would suggest making it a part of your routine in a fun way. And this is from my own experience and also working with some teens with food allergies over the years as part of my role with FAACT. We can get a certain resistance from children and teens when it comes to, hey, we need to talk about this. Like, let's sit down, blah, blah. And it's forced, it's uncomfortable. At times it could be a little bit awkward, and the parent's gonna be dismissed. The child might not remember it, but if you can make it routine and have it be for, if you have multiple children and some have food allergies and some not, have it be a family practice rather than just a practice specifically for your food allergic child as well. Because let's face it, everyone needs coping skills. It's just certainly going to help in specific situations for people with food allergies. And have it be a part of your routine. Maybe before you have dinner, you say an affirmation, or maybe after dinner every night or every other night or something, once a week, if that works for your schedule, you take a walk. Or when you wake up before you send your kids out the door to the bus, everybody takes a deep breath, kind of like an exit ticket from the house. You breathe out when you leave, you breathe in when you come back. And it doesn't have to be, okay, this is what you would do if you had a reaction, or this is what we would do if you needed to go to the restaurant, or your waiter brought the wrong food, but you didn't eat it. You wouldn't do it in that high pressured scenario. You would have it be a part of practice, and you would have them use it too, not only in those, we call them like non-escalated times, or the regulated times, or when a child's calm, whatever you want to refer to it as. You can also use it in moments that have everyday anxiety. Your child has a project coming up, they're nervous for a math test. You want to show them, you said this earlier, anxiety is a feeling that comes and goes like any other feeling. So anxiety is going to come and go as it relates to food allergies, and anxiety is going to come and go as it relates to daily things, or not even daily, but just things that happen over time. Anxiety on a math test eventually becomes anxiety for a big meeting, right? And anxiety for a big meeting might eventually come in to anxiety about, you know which new car should I buy, or marriage or house or having a child, whatever it might be, right? Through the stages of life, the things that make us anxious come and go, things that make us happy come and go, or the things that we get jealous of come and go. All these things are just a state. And I love how you said that earlier. And the same is true for anxiety. So if we can also, for our children with food allergies, not just focus on that's the only time to practice, or if we're doing scenarios, which I think is a great thing to do, role play. If you have little kids, incorporate puppets or their stuffed animals. That's a great thing. Don't just do food allergy related examples. Certainly do them, but also include other examples so that they see, oh, this isn't just an emotion that I feel as it relates to my food allergies. I was anxious before this test and it went well. I can be anxious before a food challenge and it go well, right? Or these different things like that.
Thank you so much for explaining that. It's so important. And it's just a life skill we need. Like you said, everybody needs it. No reason to single out our food allergy kiddos any more than they already get, right?
That's true.
The
Yeah.
finger pointed at them. Yeah. So I would love for you to talk a little bit more about your role as a school psychologist. I think, as you said, it's not specific to food allergies, but I don't think a lot of people really know what a school psychologist is unless they have a kid who's specifically been involved with certain services at school.
Absolutely. So my tagline for how I explain what a school psychologist is we help children emotionally, behaviorally, academically, and socially. So across the gamut, school psychologists wear many hats. A main role that you might think of when it comes to a school psychologist is they also serve as case managers for children with individualized education plans, or IEPs. So if you have a special education child, that might be a term that you're familiar with. Case manager's job are to ensure the effective implementation of that IEP, but also school psychologists are mental health professionals. So we provide individual counseling, we provide group counseling, class lessons. Some school psychologists are also involved with 504, which many food allergy parents might be familiar with if your child has a 504 plan for food allergies. In my district, I'm not the 504 coordinator, but I do often sit on 504 meetings because I sometimes counsel students that have a 504 plan. So that's an important part of things. I started my career as a traditional school psychologist, but I became my district's comprehensive mental health specialist. So now I exclusively do mental health in my district because I'm a school based registered play therapist as well. And play is obviously a powerful learning tool, but it's also a powerful healing tool, which is why I have essentially changed over the way that I do counseling within the school space to that. And my credentialing as a school psychologist allowed me to take on this role as FAACT as the director of behavioral health. So, many years ago, I would speak at FAACT, just as a person with food allergies. And that's why I love the lifespan continuum, because was a kid, became a teen, became a young adult, became a professional, and now I get to work in a space that I have professional knowledge about and personal knowledge about. So it's incredibly fulfilling to me. But back to the role of a school psychologist, I get to actually be hands-on, boots on the ground, giving mental health services through specifically play therapy almost 100% at my district. So while a school psychologist wears many hats, I now kind of have stuck to one because mental health really just became a passion out of all those different things. So I do intelligence testing and academic testing. I work with the special education population. I do gifted testing, all these different things. But my main wheelhouse now is mental health services through the vesicle of play therapy and Sandtray for some older children as well. And it is incredibly fulfilling work. And that's why I said earlier that it's not just that I've lived these things, which I think is important, but I've seen strategies work. The strategies that we're talking about, the strategies that you talk about a lot, Amanda, the strategies that are on FAACT's website, I've seen them work. I've seen them work for kids with food allergies. I've seen them work without. So I love being a school psychologist, and I do think that a lot of kids, teens out there who grow up to be people that like helping people because people have helped them. And, I just feel like people with food allergies have that kind-hearted, helping nature. School psychologist is a great career option for that. Yeah, we have a shortage of school psychologists. We could definitely use more young people going into the profession.
Yeah, to parents, if you're trying to encourage your kids what fields to go into, like all the school psychologists are retiring now, so we need them so far. And so your position sounds like such a dream job, though. A lot of districts don't have a school psych in that role specifically, so that's amazing for you. It sounds great.
Yes. So actually in New Jersey, they are pushing for more mental health, but this role is unique to my district, and I'm hopeful that more school psychologists will get this opportunity and be recognized for the advanced mental health training that they have. New Jersey released a guide to multi-tiered approach for mental health within the schools. So some districts are trying to be able to fulfill that by adding more mental health professionals in the school, which means that more kids are going to get access to things they need. And that it's going to go for kids that have food allergies as well, because we know that school can be an environment and setting where the parent's not there, so the parent might feel anxious and the child doesn't have as much control because that's a whole nother conversation about control within the school setting. But food is involved in the school setting, so it can be a place where food allergic children have more anxiety. So when there's mental health providers in the space that are equipped to help, obviously in my case I am equipped specifically for food allergies as well. But, I obviously think there's a realm for professional development for school professionals for handling anxiety as it relates to food allergies. But it can be an anxiety provoking space. So I am definitely supportive of more mental health professionals knowing about food allergies and being in the schools to help children with anxiety.
Absolutely. That's got to be so helpful. The time when this episode is going to be out is the time of year where, okay, we've gotten into school, we're doing the routine, and now is when the concerns start to arise, right? Referrals start coming in. Certainly it won't be everyone, but for parents who might either have their own concerns about their kids, wondering if they need more evaluation for any type of a concern in the classroom, or if someone at the school has approached you and said, we have this concern with your child and here's what we want to do. Could you just tell them a little bit about that process to make it a little less foreign and scary to parents now?
Absolutely. I think it is scary because it's just another unknown, right? And food allergy parents might be used to having to deal with unknowns and unpredictability and things coming up. But I also know when, let's just say, you're worried about your child's mental health or you're worried about their academic performance or someone brings that worry to you, that's just another unexpected that can, start the spiral of, okay, now there's just another thing on my plate. So, number one, utilize your coping skills. That's a great opportunity to use it. But just like we combated mental health stigma for so many years, there's, academic stigma for learning disabilities or needing IEPs. That still exists some places, that stigma. But I look at it as a way to get the help that your child needs specifically. It's individualized. It's if we're talking about an IEP, obviously 504 is different. So we're talking, does your child need accommodations or modifications within the school? If you have concerns, the best thing to do would be to reach out to your child's teacher first, because the teacher might say, well, we haven't discussed XYZ yet, or, they're a little bit behind right now, but let's wait till after the next test to kind of see if we need to do something. But then you would go to your child study team. If you're concerned, there's no harm in reaching out. There's a lot of scary discourse online about, you got to come prepared to fight, or, this or that. And unfortunately, I know that there are experiences where parents have had to do that. And that makes me sad as a person on the child study team, because I know how my district and our team operates, and our only goal is to help the child and in turn help the family, right? And that's, I would hope to think, is the heart of most school professionals that are sitting on a child study team. So hopefully you can go in with that and not feel scared to just reach out and ask a question. They'll hold a meeting. State to state, there's different regulations of how quickly you have to have that meeting or who has to be there. So I won't speak to that, but they will have to honor that and hold a meeting and discuss. They'll present you with different things. Oh, this is your child's benchmarking. Your child is in XYZ percentile, which means, if your child's in the 10th percentile, if you lined up 100 kids that child's age, they would only do better than 10 of them. So, that's not that great. Or if your child's in the 83rd percentile in that same 100 kid lineup, they'd do better than 83 of them. So that's, your child's above average, right? With 50 being in the average. So hopefully your child study team would be explaining these different things. But I would say don't be afraid to reach out. Your 504 coordinator would be who you would reach out to if you don't already have a 504 for food allergies, or if your child does have another co-occurring condition like ADHD or anxiety or another health condition. I think that it's important to have those things documented so that you can legally ensure that your child's getting the support that they need. Sometimes, I'm just going to use the example of ADHD. Sometimes your child would need an IEP because they're presenting as a need for specially designed instruction. Sometimes they wouldn't. Sometimes they just need different accommodations, like sitting closer to the teacher or someone monitoring their organization or having a wobble seat, right? These aren't modifications or changes to the way something's being presented. They're just little adjustments that's going to help your child succeed. So don't be afraid to reach out to support. Don't be afraid to go to your child's teacher. I know that it can be scary and that you might just feel like it's another thing piling on, but the people at school really want to help you. And obviously you really want to help your child. So the supports exist in schools for a reason, and the systems exist in schools for a reason. And there's going to be people there that are going to want to walk you through those systems so that your child can get what they need.
Definitely. Just to clarify, what are some other terms? Child study team, the Committee on Special Education.
There's so many different acronyms when it comes to special education, related services, counseling, whatever it may be. So you're going to want to look for something in the student services department. It could be special education team, could be INRS, which is intervention and referral services. It could be referred to as that. 504 is definitely going to be universal. So there's definitely going to be a 504 director or coordinator, intake coordinator, plug whatever you want to after that. But I would always recommend going to the teacher first, because the teacher is going to have the most holistic view of your child and know your child best. And the teacher is going to for sure be on your team. So go to them first. And if there is a different acronym or a different team, some states, actually all states, like if you're looking at some sort of specific learning disability of some kind, you have to try different interventions first before you would ever go to things. And that's true even for other conditions like anxiety, ADHD. You're going to want to actually try interventions. So a lot of places might have some sort of intervention team, and they call that lots of different things. So go to your teacher first, and they're going to point you in the right direction if you're asking the right questions. So if your right questions are, I'm looking for help for my child for XYZ thing, they're going to point you in the right direction for sure.
Great point. That's your touch point for the most part because they know your child better than anyone else in the school, right? Thank you for clarifying. It's overwhelming. I feel like we could do a whole month's worth of episodes on that topic,
Absolutely.
but yeah, thank you for sharing that. Well, we skipped over talking about Camp Tag that FAACT holds, and I would love to make sure we get a little bit in on that, and maybe even next year we can do a more in-depth chat. But you were a former camper and counselor, and obviously now with the organization, I can't think of anyone better than you to tell everybody what Camp Tag is.
Thank you. And absolutely, I think that everyone should know about Camp Tag. If you have a child with food allergies, I definitely consider sending your child to Camp Tag. There's also scholarships for Camp Tag as well. So it's certainly definitely accessible and is in several locations across the United States. Camp Tag stands for the Allergy Gang, and it services kids from age 4 to 13. So it's a wide age range, but kids that are 14 and beyond are not left behind because that's the time that they can be counselors. So actually, the first year that Camp Tag was, in action, I was actually 14. So I started as a counselor. I was just shy by a year to be able to be a camper. And I still am a little bit upset that I never got the true chance to be a camper. But the way that we run the teen counselors is they lead a group of kids in that 4 to 13 age group. You get assigned an age group, and that is going to be your counseling group for the week. But the teens still get to participate in the activities as much as possible. So really, when you're a teen, you still are getting a camp experience as well, because we have people that are on staff and adults that are counselors. We call them leaders that help for the week as well. This upcoming year, we're going to be in Nashville and Ohio again. It's a powerful time for not only kids with food allergies, but their siblings as well. So you can be a camper or a counselor if you are someone that has a sibling with food allergies as well. It's a time for the whole family. So we're not going to leave anybody out. If you are a part of a household that's managing food allergies, you're definitely welcome to be there. But it's a camp where you can have fun just like any other camp. We say 95% fun, 5% education. So from zip lining to playing gaga to arts and crafts, this is a true camp. But that 5% of education is something so unique to Camp Tag that you're not going to be able to get anywhere else. The teen counselors lead this. We talk about bullying. We talk about anxiety. We talk about managing your food allergies, recognizing the signs and symptoms of anaphylaxis. And we know that parents are talking about this in their home, but it's a whole nother thing to talk about it with kids your age and then see someone older than you who's effectively managing those allergies. It's really powerful. For some of our kids, it's, some of the only times that they're around people with multiple food allergies like them. You can have one allergy, you can have multiple, again, to be part of the camp. But for kids that are managing multiple food allergies, it's some of the first time that they're sitting with a whole room of all people that are going through something the same as them. Our snacks are free of the top 9 major allergens. Last year, our safe snack was sponsored by Red Plate Foods. And, we are in a room where everyone is eating the same snack. That's unheard of for a kid or teen with food allergies, right? Even those moments are just so special and so unique to the experience. So if you're listening and you have a kid or teen that's in that 4 to 13 age range or 14 to 18 for a counselor, definitely look at our website. Stay tuned for the upcoming dates for 2026.
Yes, and make plans now because everybody's summers are busy, but this is the time to have that on your radar. I love that aspect of this because everyone in the family is impacted by food allergies, not just the individual who has them. So what an amazing program. You have created so many great resources, Emery. I appreciate all of the work and everything you're putting out there for everybody. I will put links to everything in the show notes so that it's easy for people to find.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate what you're doing too. I love your podcast and thank you so much for having me on.
As we wrap up, here are 3 action steps that you can take to follow up on today's conversation with Emery. Number 1, follow FAACT if you do not already. Their website is foodallergyawareness.org. You'll find them if you search by name on Facebook, and on Instagram they're at FAACT News. FAACT is spelled with 2 A's. Number 2, once you've made sure that you're following them so that you don't miss anything, go to their website and click on the heading Behavioral Health. In this section, you will see what I'm talking about, this amazing behavioral health resource center that Emery has created. And number 3, if you're not already connected with me on social media, you can find me by searching for Amanda Whitehouse, the food allergy psychologist on Facebook, or on my Instagram account at the Food Allergy Psychologist. I'll be sharing lots of highlights and some of my favorite content from the FAACT Allergy Summit. If you weren't able to join us there, you can check out what you've missed and start thinking about whether you'd like to plan ahead and join us next year, and what is really an inspiring and a validating weekend with community. As always, thank you so much for listening. I hope you're finding the show helpful. And if you are, I would appreciate a rating or a review. And if you would share the episode with anyone you think would enjoy listening to. The content of this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical or mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If you have any questions about your own medical experience or mental health needs, please consult a professional. I'm Dr. Amanda Whitehouse. Thanks for joining me. And until we chat again, remember, don't feed fear.